What's up guys, my name is Ace, and a couple days ago, IGN did an interview with some of the Battlefield 6 developers, and throughout the interview, there were some key pieces of information that were revealed, and some stuff was clarified as well, and that's what I wanted to focus on today. I'm not going to be going through literally every single one of the questions and answers that was in this interview. If you want to check that out for yourself, I will of course leave that link down below. I'm primarily just going to be picking and choosing the things that I find to be most interesting that we didn't already know about, or that we got some good clarification on. And some of this was very interesting, and there's some good news in here. However, there's also a little bit of concerning news we're going to be talking about here today as well. And diving right in, let's talk about crossplay a little bit. We obviously had crossplay available in the beta, and we knew crossplay existed, but we got a bit of extra clarification here. And the first thing they clarified is if you have crossplay turned on, while you can match with any platform, if you're a console player, they're going to be first looking for other console players to match you with within a set time frame. And then if they need to fill up the lobby more after that time frame, then they will look towards PC players to fill those spots. So even with crossplay on, if you're a console player, you should primarily be playing against other console players, especially if you're in a higher player count region. Now that's something that's not brand new information, but it was nice to see some extra clarification when it comes to this. More interestingly though, and something that is new information, at least to my knowledge this is brand new information, they did mention console-only crossplay will happen if you have crossplay turned off. He said when you flip that switch, then you get basically console-only crossplay, and that is, we don't fill with PC players. And the interviewer just asked for clarification here. He said, so PlayStation players can play with Xbox players if crossplay is off still? And the answer was yeah. So that means if I'm a PlayStation player, for instance, and I turn off crossplay, I'm not just matching with other PlayStation players. I'm also matching with Xbox players, and basically turning off crossplay is just eliminating PC players from your player pool and sticking you into a console-only version of crossplay. And that's great news in my eyes. I think the majority of console players that want a crossplay option are mainly just looking to disable crossplay with PC players, and they're totally fine playing with other console players that are on a different console platform. So instead of having multiple options where you can have full crossplay off, so if you're PlayStation, you only play with PlayStation users, or console-only crossplay, so you can open it up to PlayStation and Xbox players, or crossplay on, where you open it up to any platform, they're just doing either off, which is console-only, or on, which is PC players are allowed to play with you. I like the simplicity of that, and I think for the most part, people will be happy to hear that news. Additionally, when on the topic of crossplay, they did mention they've completely redone aim assist from their Battlefield 2042 version, and they focused on what they call their combat triangle, and that is infantry versus infantry. I think there was a bit of a typo there. Infantry versus vehicles, and vehicles versus vehicles. And we did sort of see this throughout the beta, not really about the combat triangle, but we saw that they did rework aim assist. One area that we found out about is, while there was an option for it still in the settings, they actually completely eliminated aim assist snapping, which is when you aim down sight near a target, it will snap toward that target. They confirmed that wasn't actually active in the beta build of the game, whereas that's something that we've seen, I believe, with every previous Battlefield game that I can remember, at least on controller. They've had that snapping aim assist that I was never really a big fan of. Then, on a somewhat related note here, later on in the interview, they were asked, what can you say to reassure console players specifically who are worried about jumping in day one? And one of the answers here, which is great, is we've been thinking about console and the console experience from the start of Battlefield 6. It has been a top-of-the-line thing. We have to build this game as if it was made primarily for console players. Obviously, we're still also thinking about PC players, but in the past, frankly, Battlefield was built as a PC game and then ported to console, and it probably felt like that. That is not how this game was built. We built this from the beginning with the idea that this is going to be on both console and PC. It has to feel and play like it's a console game that was built to be a console game. And as somebody that primarily prefers playing my games on console, this is also excellent news. I've definitely felt what he mentioned there in the past with previous Battlefield games. There have been instances where it definitely felt like it was a PC game that was ported to console. It wasn't really the greatest experience, and when I would switch over and play PC, even if I played on controller on PC, it played significantly better on PC compared to console. Much more so than with many other games where I played both the console and PC version. So I'm glad to see that that was a big focus for them, and I think that really came out throughout the beta as well. I played the beta entirely on PlayStation 5, and it ran and played great for me. Now after that, when asked about maps and whether or not there'd be any adjustments to the maps based on feedback from the beta and Battlefield Labs, they did mention there will be some changes coming to smooth out the overall gameplay experience, but they also really wanted to make sure that each map shines, and he clarified there are going to be choke points, there are going to be rough spots, and there are going to be really sick holds that are going to happen, But there have been active discussions and active changes when it comes to massaging things a little bit, like moving MCOMs or objective points around when it came to certain feedback. So from the sounds of this, it doesn't look like they're really making any map changes outside of maybe fixing some exploits, like getting under the map in some spots. And instead, we may see some adjustments to certain objective points. They might move those around a little bit. However, I do like that he clarified that there are going to be some rough spots on maps, and I think that's actually a good thing. I think it's important to have that because that brings a lot of character to the maps as well. If you just make every map perfectly balanced in every single situation, that's going to get boring. And also, the maps will end up lacking character when doing that. So it seems like based on this, they are aiming for that middle ground where, yes, they're making some adjustments, but they're not going to be totally removing the character that the maps have in the beta in order to reach a more perfect sense of balance. Now, after that, one big piece of feedback that a lot of people had throughout the beta, myself included, was auto spotting. It was just a little too powerful. They were asked, is that going to be tweaked at all? Or is it going to be as it was in the beta? And he said they actually just submitted fixes and changes for it literally just last week. And he clarified they reduced the duration, the range, and everything across the board to really hit that system and align it more appropriately with what they want. And he did say these were some considerable changes to the system. And that sounds great to me. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the game at launch to see just how much this has changed, but I'm glad to see they took that feedback into account from the beta. And now let's get into the part that has a lot of people in the community worked up right now. At the very least, I think it should be raising some eyebrows. And this is in regards to how grounded or realistic the skins are. They were basically asked, will Battlefield stick to its guns when it comes to maintaining a non-goofy aesthetic? And I'm going to read this one in full because I think it is important to see the full context, not just the one part that a lot of people are talking about. The first answer here is, I think we're really happy with where we are. We want to be a gritty, realistic shooter. Other games can and should be whatever they want to be. And then apparently he laughed, probably thinking about Call of Duty here. And he said, like, we're not, I don't know, Fortnite is pretty goofy and that game is pretty good. So I think where we end up is we're pretty happy with where we are. We are a gritty, grounded, realistic shooter. That's what we intend to be. And that's what the game is going to look like for a while. And that for a while at the end of the sentence is really raising some eyebrows. What does that mean exactly? Does that mean they're going to stay grounded and gritty and realistic until season 2 and then all of that goes out the window and we suddenly have cartoon characters running around? Obviously, that's got people jumping to various conclusions and thinking that that's what's going to happen, and who knows, maybe they end up going that route. I personally doubt they'd go that far with it when it comes to Battlefield. I think they definitely have a more sense of groundedness overall. But I also wouldn't be surprised at all if they start pushing those limits and crossing the line, at least for some people. Everybody's got a different line as far as what they consider to be too goofy, too out there. And for me, one of the big things attracting me to Battlefield 6 is the aesthetic and the very grounded feel, especially coming off of Black Ops 6, where they push things way across the line for a lot of people. And I know many others are feeling the same way. This is a huge selling point and competitive advantage that Battlefield has, and I really don't want to see them deviate from this. I know it's going to be tempting for them because there is post-launch revenue to be made, and skins like that do tend to sell fairly well and they attract the whales, but at the same time, it has a tendency to push a lot of players away from the game because they have no control over the skins that other people are using, and those skins can have a big impact on the general aesthetic of the game and the sense of immersion that you have into the world that you're playing in. In saying that, I do want to go over the other answer from the other developer here as well. And he said, from the design side, we are aware of what other products are doing, but we're really focused on what works for Battlefield at the end of the day. We're not chasing trends. We're not chasing other products. I think a perfect example of the skins we're still committed to releasing is the Road to Battlefield 6 event that's going on in 2042. Those are 30 premium skins that will give a player a taste of what is more to come when we talk about cosmetics in the Battlefield 6 product line. Generally, I think from a design perspective, we're doing us, we're staying in our lane, doing us at the end of the day. So that's a bit more of a reassuring answer. However, that for a while part is just really hard to overlook when it comes to this. And I know, in the grand scheme of things, gameplay is far more important than skins, but skins have become a much hotter topic of debate, especially within the Call of Duty community, but we're seeing it bleed into other games as well. I think for good reason. I think with the more modern style of monetization, many old school players are seeing what we've lost with this new style of monetization because, let me put my old man hat on, back in my day, you didn't get to select your skin in the vast majority of first-person shooters. And therefore, the aesthetic of the game remained consistent from day one until the end of that game's life cycle. Or you can even go back and play some of those old games right now. It still has that same great unified aesthetic. And that's something that you just don't see anymore. It starts off great and unified, and it just degrades over time, and it just gets worse and worse with most games. And I suspect you're going to be seeing that with Battlefield 6. Personally, if I could keep the aesthetic that we saw in the beta, where literally everybody on the team has the same aesthetic, although you'd see some slight differences depending on the class that you're using, I would love for that to be just the game and how it looks like forever. I know not everybody agrees with that, and that's totally fine, but this is where that topic of a skin filter comes up again. It's something that we've been talking about a lot in the Call of Duty community, and it's something that I think would be very well suited to a Battlefield game. We do see something like that in some games, like I believe World of Tanks has a historical filter or some sort of like an immersion filter. And I do think something like this, especially in Battlefield, makes more sense than a game like Call of Duty even. Now, of course, there's the argument that people buy skins because they want other people to see them, and therefore if you have the option to just turn that off, then you're not seeing the thing that they paid for, even though they can't really see what you're seeing anyway. I also know at the end of the day, it's probably a stretch to be asking for something like this, but I think it's at least worth mentioning and bringing up the topic that I think something like that would be very well suited to Battlefield. And if that option existed, I would love to turn that on and maintain that great aesthetic that we had throughout the beta. Because the moment the game launches, that aesthetic is going to start to fade away, and then based on that statement of, for a while, who knows, it might be completely gone after a few seasons. Now, of course, those are just my thoughts on the topic. It's absolutely not a deal breaker or anything for me. I'm still really looking forward to the launch of this game, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit concerned by that statement, looking forward to the future of Battlefield 6. Outside of that, at least, I think we did get some really good news throughout this interview, though, so I am feeling quite optimistic about many of the changes that we can expect to see, as well as clarification about console-only crossplay. And this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about all of the information that was revealed throughout this interview, including that statement about cosmetics, and how they're going to maintain that gritty, grounded, realistic feel for a while? Are you guys concerned about that? Do you really just not care at all about it? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.